This is the state of field marches in Rise of Kingdoms. With the popularity of the first two videos in the series, I wanted to quickly follow up on where the field marches in Rise of Kingdoms stand. Please note that this is not an extensive list and will primarily focus on the most viable march pairings, but unlike rallies and garrisons, off-meta pairs can work much more easily, since the field can be more impacted and driven by numbers and tactics over the actual viability of each individual pair. But these marches should put you in the best position to succeed. Without further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk cavalry. The Cavalry Field meta has not really changed much in the last few cycles, due to the rock-solid nature of Nevsky and the rally and garrison focus of the last few cycles, with some field sprinkled in the middle as well. For the meta, Nevsky is still the big player in the meta, and you can put him with either Joan Prime or William. Joan Prime should be a minimum of 5115 to be used, preferably 5515 for the mobility, and most ideally expertise for maximum damage output, while William can be left at 5551 as the bonuses in the skill only change the 10% defense boost to 20%, which is still useful, but really isn't super necessary in the field because the 10% defense to allies is still useful. Similarly to Nevsky, you have Huo, who can go with either Joan Prime or William, as well under the same conditions. Huo does good burst damage, and the longer the fighting gets, the better it is to have Nevsky, and that's really the drawback and why I think Nevsky is still the better option. You can also use Belisarius Prime with Huo to get some more debuff value and help your own marches, as well as your allied marches deal more damage to focused targets. One last piece I'll touch on with these two is you can put the two of them together to be a 1v1 dual march, but it isn't very good in large field groups because of the lack of AoE or support. Outside of the main meta players, you do have some extra options. Zhang Yu is a good option that you can go with Honda if you're looking for an interesting mixed pair, or with Belisarius Prime. Of the two, Belisarius Prime is the better pair overall, but there is a dedicated base of people who do put Zhang Yu with Honda. Last off in the meta, of course, is Attila Takeda, which is still a solid pair, but is more oriented around being tanky rather than being a damage output. So, in the normal damage that they do use, it's great for short burst fighting, or when the enemy has heavy enemy field where you're going to be swarmed, because in those, they tend to even out the trades a lot better. For gear, you'll want to go for a minimum of 2 out of 6 on your equipment set for the Wasteland. Most often you will be using the boots and the chest piece, but you can use several other options if you want, but these are the most optimal because they provide health. If you don't want to go with the Season of Conquest items, you can go with 4 out of 6 instead and get the counterattack damage, but generally speaking, it's good to have the Season of Conquest items if you are going cavalry. You'll want to prioritize health over defense over attack. Since the field has lower gear requirements as well, keep this in mind as you build, as a few good purples that have health or defense might be something that you want to wait to the end to replace, rather than replacing them early. For field accessories, I prefer Ring and Horn as the gold standard for damage output, because it benefits even Attila Takeda, but some may go for normal damage and counter damage boost accessories on Attila to maximize the non-skill damage approach. For formations, Nevsky, Huo, and Zhang Yu will all want to use Wedge, while Attila will want to use Arch, and both of them will basically want to boost as much of their damage output as possible, whether that's skill damage or normal damage. Next, we're on to archers. Just like the cavalry, there are two main primaries for the meta, and that's Boudica Prime and Hermann Prime. Of the two, Hermann Prime is probably the better option, but both do exceptionally well in the field and have great abilities to debuff enemies and turn out a good amount of damage in the process. For example, this skill doing 35% more skill damage taken by the target is a great example of why Boudica Prime is a good option as well. For secondaries, both have the same options. Liang and YSG are the most popular. Liang is the better option for an overall even damage output, but YSG is great at boosting the primary commander's damage output instead. Overall, any combination of the 4 of these commanders works, so long as YSG is not the primary in any of these cases. Of the combos, I prefer Boudica with Liang and Hermann with YSG, since YSG's boost then hits that massive primary commander AoE. But that is at the cost of Hermann Prime being more vulnerable in that case. While running Boudica YSG and Hermann Liang makes both a little tankier and takes a little bit less damage overall, and it also deals a little bit less damage. But ultimately, you'll want to shape these pairs to fit your playstyle. Liang YSG is another popular option, but I just avoid it because there's a little bit more fragility there that I don't particularly care for. So I like to split Herman and Boudica off and pair them with an AoE. For gear, more is better with archers when it comes to the set, especially the set piece bonuses. Overall, if you can get 6 out of 6, that is perfect. But if you can only get 4, that is excellent as well. And when it comes to the Season of Conquest weapon and helm, the Season of Conquest weapon is one of the best Season of Conquest items. So if you can get it, terrific. If not, it's not the end of the world. Like with other sets, health is great, which is why the 6 set piece is such a benefit and boost. But defense is also good, and then last, you want to focus attack last. Especially for archers who have a lot of already damage output, being able to give them more defense and health helps keep them alive for longer. For accessories, ring is an absolute must, because every single one of them are based on heavy damage output. While horn is also a great second best item, because more rage means more skills means more damage, and archers love damage output. For formations, wedge is your best friend, and it's going to go with every pair I cover above, because all of them are dealing skill damage right now. You're just going to want to maximize that skill damage as much as you possibly can. Last, but most certainly not least, we have infantry. With Scipio Milianus and William Wallace on the way, the field meta is set to be shaken up significantly. But first, we'll cover the established players, and to do that, you have to start with Scipio Prime. The health debuff that Scipio Prime has on his primary skill, that's a 30% debuff, is huge for the field, especially because it hits multiple targets. This is a great option for players to build most field marches around. His most ideal pairs are Guan is a popular choice, Liu Che is a currently popular choice because of the lack of normal damage around other commanders in the meta, but that might be changing here shortly, or Alexander. Alexander is the most fragile pair, but the most supportive, and it's the one that I prefer, just because those debuffs between the damage vulnerability on Alexander and the health debuff on Scipio make everybody else deal more damage. But Liu Che is also a very damage-heavy pair with his huge AoE to go with Scipio Primes. But when we talk about Liu Che, he has some interesting options on his own as well, as Gorgo Liu Che is a very popular choice right now, and has insanely solid damage output while being super tanky as well. Good normal damage and an AoE makes this a great option for Garrison players who already have Gorgo, or field players who just want to build her and double up on value as a backup Garrison option, or as a city defense if you were trying to use it as the field and then go to, for example, Shadow Legion. Lastly, Liu Che does have great potential with the new William Wallace. Personally though, despite Scipio Milianus being a rally and having some rally-specific skills, there's great potential in William Wallace and Scipio Milianus being a field pairing. With his good kit synchronicity and the ability to remove multiple debuffs between the self-shield and move speed debuff that William Wallace removes, and the defense and health debuffs that Scipio Milianus removes. It has potential to be an absolutely tenacious pair and a great support pair with that damage vulnerability on Scipio Milianus' primary skill, which is technically more powerful than Belisarius Prime's expertise, although Belisarius Prime's is a passive versus a skill cast. For gear, you have more options than you do for cavalry and archers when you talk about variety, with a lot of great value pieces off in the main set. Generally, players go for 2 out of 6, but 4 out of 6 is also a good option. But it's hard to do a full set of 6 because there's so much attack. The Season of Conquest items are okay as well, and the Empire set pieces are just not very good. A popular option for many infantry mains, especially in the field, is going for the 2 leadership health items, and then 2 items from the Empire set that you can get defense from, and then you get 2 different set bonuses while also getting some health on a very health star set, because all the other legendaries that are infantry specific do not really provide health. But ultimately, you'll want to build to what you can, focusing on health over defense over attack. The one thing I want to say is not be understated here too is the Gatekeeper Shield is a great field piece because 8% health is huge. For accessories, no matter what the damage type is, if you're going normal damage or skill damage, Ring and Horn are still the best since they boost all damage and boost rage. which will work no matter what your damage source happens to be. For formations, pairs with Scipio Prime will likely be best off using Wedge, while pairs with Liu Che, William Wallace, or Scipio Milianus will be best off with Arch. In the case of Scipio Prime Liu Che, I recommend Wedge, although formation choice is a weakness of this pair, so there's no truly excellent answer. You could also go with Hollow Square for the shield boost, or you can go with Arch if you want to have more normal damage, or Triple Line for more mobility. Overall, this is probably the most flexible, but it's mostly because there's just weak synchronicity with the armaments and formations versus the pairing. But with that, we will wrap up our discussion on the state of field marches. As I said, this is by no means totally comprehensive, but I wanted to at least cover where the meta is at currently for the stacked field meta. But let me know what you think. Do you have a favorite field pair that I might have missed? Let me know in the comments. If you want to see me cover another topic, the comment section is a great place to do that as well, or you can join the Discord and suggest content like that using the link in the description. And as always, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield.